Today we are going to be talking about language modeling. Let's dive right on in. So, these are our 3 objectives for this session. We are going to talk about the purpose of the instructional support domain, under which language modeling falls. Then we will explore language modeling. And finally, we will have a chance to practice finding components of language modeling in a video we observe. And then when we practice during our live session, you will get a chance to role play some strategies that you will be able to bring back to your own classroom. As always, here is our Wheel of Every Child Ready guiding principles. Today we are going to focus on the guiding principle of intentional, as we plan to be intentional with the language modeling strategies that we will learn about today and utilize in our instruction moving forward. We will also focus on the ECR guiding principle of reflective, because in order to ensure that our students are receiving high-quality learning experiences, it is imperative that as educators we are reflective and honest about our execution of instruction and language modeling in the classroom. Wanted to begin with this quote. Instructional support assesses the ways in which teachers implement the curriculum to effectively promote cognitive and language development. This domain measures how teachers support and extend children's thinking, problem solving, and conversational and vocabulary skills. Something to make note of is that instructional support is not focused on the content of the curriculum or on the learning activities, but instead it describes the ways in which teachers implement lessons and activities to promote both higher order thinking and language development. Instructional support also focuses on how teachers use feedback to help children learn. These are the 3 dimensions within instructional support. So instructional support is really concentrated on higher order thinking. We want to think about how we can get students to think. Think about passing the torch or the extra work of thinking onto the students. This is how much work can you give the students to do the thinking, and how can you support them in that? Within the class manual, there are 3 dimensions that fall under the domain of instructional support. The first one is concept development. Concept development measures how teachers promote children's higher order thinking skills. The second dimension is quality of feedback. Quality of feedback measures how teachers extend learning through their responses to children's ideas, comments, and work. And last but not least, which we will be discussing today, the final dimension within the instructional support domain is language modeling. And language modeling measures how teachers facilitate and encourage children's language use. So, diving on in. There are many reasons why language modeling is important in early childhood. Something we want to keep in mind is how learning is more effective when students have an opportunity to participate fully in lessons by discussing ideas and information. Something we also want to keep in mind is how language development is active, not passive, which means that as educators, we must consistently put forth the effort to build language modeling opportunities into our instruction on a daily basis, from the time our students enter our classroom until dismissal. We should also keep in mind that according to the class manual, language modeling captures the quality and amount of the teacher's use of language stimulation and language facilitation techniques, which indicates how important it is to be mindful within our practice of the frequency in which we are embedding language modeling practices. So take a moment and think about what components in your daily schedule do you feel provide students with the most language stimulation and language facilitation? What times of the day do you believe your students could benefit from more language modeling opportunities? Okay, I hope you had a moment to think, and now we're going to move on. These are the 5 indicators of language modeling. According to the class pre-K manual, language modeling is defined as capturing the quality and amount of the teacher's use of language stimulation and language facilitation techniques. A teacher that scores high in language modeling in the class manual has frequent conversations in the classroom, asks many open-ended questions, often repeats or extends student responses, consistently maps his or her own actions and the student's actions through the language and description, and often uses advanced language with students. These aspects of language modeling must be frequently implemented and must be of high quality in order to score high in language modeling. That's why we like to put an emphasis on the words frequent, often, and consistently. Something to make note of is that language modeling focuses on the quality and quantity of the language. So let's dive a bit deeper into each indicator. Frequent conversations. Frequent conversations include back and forth exchanges, contingent responding, which can be defined as a teacher providing a response to a student by following the student's lead and responding to that particular student's comment or question, and peer conversations. It's important to keep in mind how through conversations you can encourage language use, support vocabulary, and stretch and deepen conversations with your students. It's important for our students to talk within the classroom setting to develop language and social skills. One example of a time of day where frequent conversations can take place is centers. This is when students are interacting with one another, and through centers facilitation, we can encourage and facilitate frequent conversations with students. Let's talk about some open-ended questions. So before we begin, let's think about close-ended. Close-ended questions are questions that you might have a specific answer in mind. So like, what color is this? How many blocks do you have? Those are closed-ended questions. Now let's talk about open-ended questions. An open-ended question is a question that provides a range of possible answers. So something like, can someone provide an example of this? Or how do you know that that person's feeling sad? Or what do you think will happen next? Where can we put this Lego tower to keep it safe while we go outside? What can we wear to keep our bodies warm? The list is endless. Be aware of how you use open-ended and closed-ended questions. Both question types have a purpose. There's nothing wrong with some closed-ended questions throughout the day to check for understanding or misunderstanding, because it's important to sometimes have a specific answer in mind. Open-ended questions are great for having conversations, which, ding, 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 we're talking about with language modeling. So, obviously, we're going to talk about open-ended questions today while we're talking about language modeling. A few examples of other open-ended questions would begin with words like, tell me about, or how do you know? So if you're going to have a conversation with students, an example might sound like this. A student might say, look what I built. And instead of the teacher saying, wow, you built a tower, the teacher could say, well, tell me about it. Then the student can have a chance to share, it's a tower. And then the teacher can continue that conversation by saying, how did you build that tower? The next indicator is repetition and extension. Repetition and extension is an important tool to support language modeling. Children will retain more information if it is repeated and reviewed frequently. Let me state it again. Children and adults retain more information if it is repeated and reviewed frequently. So, by extending and elaborating children's communication, you effectively continue the conversation. You also reinforce their language knowledge and confidence while you add to their vocabulary and understanding in a natural and supportive way. In a high-quality language environment, the teacher focuses first on students' attempts to communicate and then builds directly onto students' contributions. A teacher who scores high on language modeling in class often repeats and extends student responses. So here's my role play. If a child says, oh, he's sick, the teacher might say, oh, you think he's sick? Why do you think the child is sick? The child might say, look, temperature thing. And the teacher could say, that is a temperature thing. It's called a thermometer, and it takes your temperature. Something like that. All right, our next indicator is self and parallel talk. These are probably one of my favorite indicators within language modeling. Self-talk is when you narrate what you are doing, seeing, touching, or hearing in the moment. So think about like a cooking show, like Rachel Ray or Martha Stewart, or I don't really watch that many cooking shows, so I don't have too many examples, but they're like, oh, I'm chopping up my veggies. Now I'm putting them in the bowl. You guys get the idea. But that's what self-talk is. And it's really, really valuable for students to be able to hear the words that go along with the actions that a teacher might be doing. Now, this other favorite one is parallel talk, and it's like sports casting. And it's kind of fun because you're narrating what the child is doing while it's happening. And you can have fun with it. You can be like, oh, I see that little Johnny is picking up his toy and he's bringing it over to play with his friend. Wow, he's sharing his toy with his friend. Now they're both building blocks together. Again, you guys get the idea. But kind of keep these two things in mind. So they're both important and they both have their place throughout the day. But they can be a really helpful way to support children's language development. All right, so now, we are going to chat about advanced language. Advanced language embeds a variety of words into your conversation. Advanced language should be connected to familiar words or ideas, and a teacher that scores high in advanced language uses a variety of nouns, verbs, adverbs, adjectives, prepositions, and other forms of language that are new to students, but map onto concepts that students might already know. So here's an example. Teacher might say to a student, tell me about your hat. And the student might start saying red, orange, yellow, blue, green. Obviously, they have a multicolored hat. So the teacher would say, wow, you have many different colors on your hat, like a rainbow. It's a multicolored hat. Multicolored means lots of different colors. So you're giving students a framework for the new word that you're introducing. This can be a lot of fun also. Children should be immersed in words and should be active in developing their understanding of words and ways to learn them. All right, so now that we have learned about these 5 indicators of language modeling, we're going to take a look at a video that showcases language modeling. And so, as you are watching, I want you to be sure to jot down any reflections or questions that you might have. But I really want you to be on the lookout for these 5 indicators that we just discussed. Because in the next activity, you're going to need to enter examples of the 5 activities from the video on a page. So here is the video.
I put all the girls and boys to see what I'm doing.
I'm watching. Can you tell me something about what you're doing?
Each girl needs another girl.
Each girl needs another girl? That's like having partners, isn't it? 2 girls together. They can be partners.
The mommy and daddy lift that one up.
They did? They lifted her up?
They all have to stand in order. A line is an order.
The line is the order?
We don't have to stand out and like that.
I sure can try. Let's see. I'm going to put it down very gently and slowly.
All right, so that was a really quick and short clip. But on the next page, I want you to fill out how you saw an example of each indicator in that video. All right, I'll see you guys later on this week. Take care.